Alright guys, so a lot of you have probably been wondering, well, we read the front part of My Parents Wrecked My Favorite Jeans. I know it goes on page 135. Were we supposed to attach it to our notebooks yet? Or maybe you were wondering, oh, she had us do that vocab, but we haven't even taken care of the rest of this worksheet. That's okay. I haven't told you to staple this in, nor have I told you to fill in any of this worksheet. Okay, we're actually going to do that in this video. What we have done together is we've read this whole reading guide, and we've completed this vocab extra flippy flappy foldable thing. In this video, we're going to be focusing on alleles, what they are, and what in the world do all of the words that are related to them, like dominant and recessive, genotype, phenotype, homozygous, and heterozygous, what do all those words mean? Because alleles relate to all of these other words: dominant, recessive, genotype, phenotype, homozygous, and heterozygous. So alleles, when we talk about alleles, we're talking about two letters. We're talking about letters that represent different forms of a gene. Okay? And you learned that genes are the characteristics that you have: your blue eyes, your brown eyes, your green eyes, the color eyes that you have, your hair color, how tall you are. Those are all characteristics that are determined by your genes, which are in your DNA. So every gene has two alleles. One of those alleles you get from your mother, one of those alleles you get from your father. Okay? So we always represent alleles in genetics as letters, capital and lowercase letters, kind of like variables in algebra. But it's a whole lot easier to deal with letters than it is to talk about the whole gene itself. In science, especially in higher level biologies and genetics, those genes have really weird names, like P5287. I don't want to talk about that. I really just want to talk about the alleles and what they code for. Okay, so alleles, they're letters that represent different forms of a gene. Usually there's two forms of a gene. There is a dominant form of a gene, and there's a recessive form of a gene. Okay, so dominant, if you have a dominant allele, we represent that by a capital letter. Okay, if you think about that, dominating or dominant something is something that's pretty big. It overshadows. Okay, so usually dominant alleles, they are capital letters. Overshadow means that if there's a capital letter in a pair of alleles, it's going to be dominant. Okay, recessive alleles are lowercase. Okay, and they are usually hidden. Unless there's two recessive genes paired together, they're hidden. Okay, so if I have a big D and a little d together, well, we would say that that pair is dominant. It has a big D, and capital letters, they always win. Okay, these recessive letters, you can only see them if they're two together. Okay, that's all we're going to talk about right now, is alleles being dominant or recessive. Let me give you some examples. So to show you a little bit about alleles, I'm going to talk about eye color. Now, there's lots of different eye colors. There's blue, there's brown, there's green, and hazel. We're really just going to deal with two eye colors. We're going to look at brown eyes, and we're going to look at blue eyes. Now, if you have brown eyes, you got that because your mother gave you a set of genes and your father gave you a set of genes, and together they combined to give you brown eyes. Same if you have blue eyes. If you have blue eyes, it means that your mother gave you a specific set of genes and your father gave you a specific set of genes, and they combined to make blue eyes. So we said alleles are letters. Okay? So the letter that represents brown eyes is a big B. The letter that represents blue eyes is a little b. And kids ask me why. Well, there's a good reason why. Scientists have done a lot of experiments and a lot of research, and they realized that brown is more common, and it's also the dominant allele. It's the dominant gene type. Okay? If you have a gene or an allele that codes for brown eyes is always what's going to be seen. Even if you have a gene that codes for blue eyes, the brown eyes is what's going to be seen. That's why we use big B for brown eyes. It's dominant, and it's going to cover up anything else that's there. This little b, the only way that you're going to have blue eyes is if your mother gives you the allele for blue eyes, and if your father gives you the allele for blue eyes. So there's a couple combinations that could happen. You could have both of your parents giving you the allele for brown eyes. So these are both dominant. Okay, so it doesn't matter. This is going to be a brown-eyed person. Your parents could both have given you the allele for blue eyes. Remember we said that these are lowercase, so these are going to be recessive. But there's also some times where one of your parents could have given you the allele for brown eyes, the dominant, and one of your parents could have given you the allele for blue eyes, the recessive allele. Well, any time that there is a capital letter in the pair of letters, we would say that this is going to be dominant. Okay, the capital letters are dominant, and it's going to cover up the lowercase level, and this person is going to be brown-eyed. So, I want you now to go ahead and find your My Parents Wrecked My Favorite Genes worksheet, and I want you to open it up. All right, we're actually going to skip this section right here. Yes, you can cross this out. The very first section we're not doing. You can cross that out. But we are going to look at number 2 and number 3. We just talked about the words dominant and recessive. So we need to figure out what we can put on each of these blanks. This trait would be represented by a big B, a big D, or a big Z. Number 3, this trait would be represented by a little b, a little d, or a little z. Use what we've just talked about and figure out which is going to be which. Are we going to have dominant or recessive for the first and dominant or recessive for this second blank? All right. I'm even going to put this information back up. What did we say capital letters were? Are they dominant or recessive? What about lowercase letters? Are they dominant or recessive? All right. So now that you know a little bit about dominant and recessive, I want to talk about what happens when these letters combine. I'm going to go back to our vocab really quickly, and we're going to look at the words homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous is also known as purebred. So if you've ever heard of a purebred dog, they are homozygous for certain traits. Heterozygous or hybrid means that they are going to be maybe different. So homozygous, the definition for homozygous is when the letters combine and they are the same. And what do we mean by the same is that they're the same case. They are either all capital or they're all lowercase. Okay, so homozygous means the same. And actually, the beginning of homozygous, homo means same. Okay, when we look at hetero, hetero means different. It's also the opposite of what homozygous is going to look like. So heterozygous, it's a combination of letters that are different. And really, they're different cases. So we have a capital and a lowercase. Okay, so heterozygous means they're different cases. We have capital and lowercase. So let's go back to our blue-eyed and brown-eyed people. We said that these two individuals right here, they would be dominant. They're dominant because they have capital letters. Okay? This individual over here, he is recessive. He is recessive because he has lowercase letters. Okay? So now we talk about these words homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous means the same case for both letters. Homozygous means the same. So when I look at some of these letters put together, okay, well, this is a big B and this is a big B. They are the same case. They are homozygous. So the homozygous options would be big B and big B. And there's another homozygous option. This guy right here. He's got little b and little b. Okay, these are homozygous. They are the same case. We would call this person homozygous dominant because he has both the same case letters and they're both capital. So homozygous because they're the same case and dominant because they are capital. So these are homozygous over here. And the other word was heterozygous. Heterozygous, they are the different cases. So they are different cases. This individual right here is heterozygous. He has a big B and a little b. Okay, so homozygous, they're going to be the same case. Heterozygous, they're going to be different cases. An uppercase and a lowercase, a big B and a little b. So let's go back to our notes. We're going to look at number 4 and number 5. Big B, or little b, little b. Big D, or little d. Big Z, or little z would represent a homozygous or heterozygous genotype. And number 5, big B, big D, little d, and big Z, little z would represent a homozygous or heterozygous genotype. Use the information that we just discussed to figure out which is going to be homozygous and heterozygous. We have one line right here, number 4, and one line right here, number 5, I want you to fill out. You can also go ahead and use your vocabulary to figure out what's another name for heterozygous and what's another name for homozygous. Those are right on your vocabulary cards. Let's look at number 8. We've got a large table down here, and we need to figure out if all of these are talking about homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, or heterozygous genotypes, or maybe it's a phenotype. Now, we haven't talked about genotypes or phenotypes yet. So genotypes are the combinations of letters. The big B's, or little b, little b. They're just the combination of alleles, the combination of letters. The phenotype kind of sounds like photo to me. And that's a picture. It's actually what the trait is. Okay? So it's the physical traits that people see. It's like a photo of you. Phenotype is like a photo of you. In our examples, big B, little b, little b, these are all genotypes. Okay? These are genotypes. The letters are genotypes. The phenotypes are what you see, either brown eyes or blue eyes. The phenotypes are what you see, brown eyes or blue eyes. So, when we go to our vocabulary term, first thing that I see is 2 capital N's. So, they are both capital. Are they dominant or recessive? Well, capital is going to be dominant. Okay? They are also the same case. So they are going to be homozygous. The second one, they're different cases. This is going to be heterozygous. And because it has a capital letter, this is also going to show the dominant trait. Now, we don't really talk about heterozygous dominant because anytime that there's a capital letter, we know that it's going to be the dominant trait. But you can go ahead and put that in there anyways. Brown fur, well, that's what we see. That's the phenotype. Your job is to complete the rest of this table.